That's number one. You kind of reset.
Painful, tender to the touch. May also
Same shoulder length, and the other. Hello, and welcome back to our next episode of the Real Health Podcast with Brandi and Amir. I am Dr. Amir Rashidian, a chiropractor, and Brandi is my better half.
And the episode counter, we're at 50.
Oh, wow.
I'm so excited.
That's fantastic.
It's like my little countdown because 52 is coming, and that's super big because that means we've been doing this for a year.
Oh, yeah. I wonder if anybody's watched all 50 episodes.
Ooh, there might be a prize in that.
Let us know if you've seen all 50. And and I'll send you a book. How's that?
Yeah, that's fun.
That'd be cool. If anybody there has watched all 50, let us know within the next 7 days. So between now and next Monday, when the next episode comes out, and we'll do and Sean, because we're recording this before. Sean, can you put like the date that this comes out on the screen? So the date you see on the screen right now, 7 days from within the next 7 days, let us know that you have seen all 50 episodes.
That's right.
Do we charge them for shipping?
No, we can cover that.
Cover the cost of shipping? All right.
Yeah.
So how about the first 10? Oh, yeah. That's true. Audio people need it would be the 15th. But today's the 15th, but this isn't going to air until two weeks, right? 27th. Okay. So the date is May 27th. Is that Memorial Day?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's 2 days before our wedding anniversary. Our wedding anniversary is the 29th.
That's fun.
Very cool.
All sorts of celebrations.
Very cool. So 7 days from May 27th, the first 10 people who tell us that they have watched all 50 episodes, we will ship you a copy of my book, and I can even sign it for them.
Yeah.
I'll sign it for you. So that'd be great. Would love to know if you've watched all 50 episodes. Anyways, Real Health Podcast is where we take the latest news in mainstream media about health and wellness and medicine, and we read it for you, summarize it for you, give you the bullet points, tell you what's important, what you need to know, how you can apply it to your life. Our focus and goal is always to help you feel better, get stronger, live longer, and feel younger.
Yep.
And I'm feeling pretty young today, so why don't we get started?
Let's do it.
All right. First article, I promised we would talk about this one today, is from NBC News, and the title says, "Parents of boy whose heart stopped for 19 hours were stunned when it started beating again."
I would have been stunned also.
Wow. Very cool.
Excited.
Now, it's not what you think. It's not like he was in the morgue and came back to life. So this is Denver. The family of a 4-year-old boy whose heart had stopped beating hours earlier gathered at Children's Hospital, Colorado, last month to say their final goodbyes to Cartier McDaniel. Nice name.
Yeah.
Cartier. Some slept in the waiting room when they weren't praying at Cartier's bedside. After doctors told his parents' names are Destiny Anderson and Dominique McDaniel, that it was only a matter of time before his life support machine wouldn't be able to keep his body functioning properly without a heartbeat. All attempts to restart his heart had failed. It was the worst moment of my life. The whole hospital room was spinning. I was shaking. I couldn't believe it was happening, Anderson said. Anderson's the mother. But in nothing short of a medical miracle to Anderson and McDaniel, their young son's heart began pumping on its own again 19 hours after it had stopped. Anderson and McDaniel said doctors told them that they didn't have a scientific or medical explanation for why Cartier's heart began beating again. Doctors on Cartier's medical team were unavailable for comment this week, the hospital said. But McDaniel said he had a spiritual explanation. It was God.
I love that.
What else could it be? Cartier's ordeal began April 8th when he ran a fever that Anderson treated with Tylenol. I thought it was a cold and would go away, she said. The next day, his condition worsened. His hands and feet became cold. His mouth turned blue. He sweated. Dark circles formed around his eyes, and his breathing was labored. I mean, I would say that should be urgent care, emergency room right
100%.
away. It says he drank lots of water that day and stayed in bed, which Anderson thought was odd because he's usually an active, inquisitive child. She knew something was really amiss when Cartier wet his bed, she said. She called the nursing line for Children's Hospital Colorado when, upon hearing the symptoms, recommended to go to the hospital immediately. During diagnostic testing for ailments such as diabetes, Cartier's eyes rolled to the back of his head, and doctors couldn't find a pulse. Anderson and McDaniel said they said he had gone into cardiac arrest. They began administering CPR to no avail. Anderson helplessly looked on. The doctors were pressing on his chest, she said. I started crying and getting hysterical. Medical staff escorted her out of the emergency room. Cardiac arrest occurs when the heart suddenly and unexpectedly stops pumping and blood stops flowing to the brain and other vital organs, according to the National Institutes of Health. In 2000, this is on a side note, in 2019, British hiker Audrey Schumann, 34 years old, survived what doctors have called the longest cardiac arrest in Spain's history after her heart stopped for 6 hours in a snowstorm, according to today.com. Unlike McDaniel, she did not receive immediate medical attention but somehow survived. Emergency room doctors had diagnosed McDaniel with an infection caused by Group A streptococcus or Strep A bacteria. Cartier's parents said they didn't know what infection their son may have suffered beyond this description, although Strep A can cause various infections from strep throat to scarlet fever. The condition led to sepsis. That's when blood is infected. That means this bacteria gets in this blood. The body's extreme response to an infection, they said. When Cartier's heart stopped, doctors placed him on a form of life support in which blood is pumped through an artificial lung, where oxygen is added and carbon dioxide is removed. The treatment temporarily keeps a patient alive even if the patient's heart isn't working, but doctors must determine whether the organs and other parts of the body will recover, said Dr. Michael Fundora, a pediatric cardiologist at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, who was not involved in Cartier's care and did not review the medical records. So I guess, earlier they said his doctors weren't available to comment,
Correct.
so they talked to someone else. Medical personnel spent 30 minutes trying to revive McDaniel as his bloodstream was being attacked by Strep A, his parents said. Cartier was then moved to intensive care unit. At that point, we're just praying for the best, Anderson said. Doctors told the family that Cartier wasn't likely to survive. That night, other family members went to the hospital to say goodbye to the 4-year-old, described by his parents as a natural protector who looks forward to thrill-seeking adventures like finding spiders and playing games at the arcade. I'm not going to lie. I did have doubts that everything was going to be okay. I'm human, said Anderson, who has 6 other children, including 3 with McDaniel. I'm thinking, how am I going to tell my kids I'm not bringing their brother home? I was trying to make peace with this. I was trying to make peace that this may be what God wants. Leaning on her faith, she said she asked God to be with her son. Soon afterward, Cartier's heart began beating. Initially, doctors believed Cartier would be blind because the part of the brain that regulates vision was damaged by a lack of oxygen, his parents said. But doctors later changed their prognosis and said he would retain his vision. Um, he remains on dialysis and breathing tubes and has undergone multiple skin graft surgeries after the infection deteriorated his skin. So, he's not out of the woods yet.
Right.
Cartier's long-term prognosis is unclear because the ability of a child's developing brain and kidneys to rebound is often unpredictable. But we've seen that. Remember your brother's kidneys failed,
Yeah.
and he was in the hospital, and they said, "This is it."
On dialysis. Yeah.
You went to the hospital to say goodbye to him. We thought he had 7 days left.
Yeah. And he rebounded.
And then he recovered and came out of hospital. And,
yeah, and that's with a body that had been under way more stress than Cartier's,
right?
Who had really done a lot of damage to his body because of some of his lifestyle choices. And so for a rebound to happen there, I just always go back to God created the body so amazingly that it's not always predictable. I know it's very easy for doctors to get locked in to what they've seen, but there is something else that is at work that they often cannot explain, and those are some of my favorite stories. So I'm really glad that we get to see this here with Cartier.
Yeah, I hope there's an update at some point on his condition.
Yeah.
He also may have suffered damage to other organs. For now, his parents said there's no timetable for Cartier's release from the hospital. Anderson said she blames herself for not taking him to the hospital sooner. She said, "I waited too long."
Yeah.
But I wonder if he's coherent or speaking. I wonder if he's communicating.
We'll have to try to follow that story and bring an update, because I know our listeners would appreciate that. I wish they'd given
us a little more about how he is now.
Yeah.
It's still a miracle. This one's from New York Times. A peek inside the brains of super agers.
Ooh,
I think I'm a super ager.
I think you are a super ager.
Yeah.
I mean, you just got your new rating. Can I share that? So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we just did a whole life insurance, looking for a new policy, and you got a better rating than you did like 5 years ago.
10 years
10
ago.
years ago.
Yeah,
That's
so
crazy.
I got life insurance when I was 40, and my rating wasn't top. It was like, I don't know how they rated. It was like the second tier. And then this time I'll be 50 this year. And they gave me the highest health rating
possible.
Yeah.
Like top 3%
Yeah.
of humans.
So I'm younger at 50 than I was at 40.
Yes, I have work to do.
I'm going backwards.
Got to keep up.
You better. You're going to live longer than me, though. They say women live longer.
That's what's predicted, but that's before they saw your rating.
Yeah, but I'm a good husband,
You're a great husband.
Thanks. You don't have to say that. A peek inside the brains of superagers. New research explores why some octogenarians, not octopi, not octopus, octogenarians have exceptional memories. You know what octogenarians are?
In their 80s?
They're 80 to 89 is an octogenarian. When it comes to aging, we tend to assume that cognition gets worse as we get older. Our thoughts may slow down or become confused, or we may start to forget things, like the name of our high school English teacher. I already forgot most of them. I mean, I had Mr. Gausman.
We remember him.
Yeah. And that's it. I don't know if I remember all my English teachers' names in high school, but so high school English teacher, or what we meant to buy at the grocery store. But that's not the case for everyone. For a little over a decade, scientists have been studying a subset of people they call superagers. These individuals are age 80 and up, but they have memory ability of a person 20 to 30 years younger.
That's fun.
Most research on aging and memory focuses on the other side of the equation, people who develop dementia in their later years. But if we're constantly talking about what's going wrong in aging, it's not capturing the full spectrum of what's happening in the older adult population.
I love to hear that. You mean
I
we
know.
actually want to look at the flip side of the coin so we can get a full picture? That's an amazing concept.
This is the person who said this is Emily Rogalski, a professor of neurology at the University of Chicago who published one of the first studies on superagers in 2012. A paper published Monday in the Journal of Neuroscience helps shed light on what's so special about the brains of superagers. The biggest takeaway, in combination with a companion study that came out last year on the same group of individuals, is that their brains have less atrophy than their peers do. Atrophy is shrinkage.
Correct.
Not that kind of shrinkage. Not the one on Seinfeld.
You're correct.
This is different shrinkage. If you're not a Seinfeld fan,
You won't get that.
Google it.
You won't get that.
Yeah, or go to YouTube and type in Seinfeld shrinkage and watch the scene. But this is brain shrinkage. It happens with age, and they don't shrink, the superagers.
That's what it says.
The research was conducted on 119 octogenarians from Spain, 64 superagers, and 55 older adults with normal memory abilities for their age. The participants completed multiple tests assessing their memory, motor and verbal skills, underwent brain scans and blood draws, and answered questions about their lifestyle and behaviors. Now, what do you think would be the discovery before I tell them? Or you've read the article, so what do you think our audience is thinking? That why are the superagers, why do they have good memories while others their age don't?
Well, I would assume, because my thought process going in was it's got to be something nutritionally,
Yeah.
right? So maybe that's what they're thinking.
Yeah, or activity.
Activity.
You're going to find something very interesting. You are going to find something very interesting. The scientists found that the superagers had more volume in the areas of the brain important for memory, most notably the hippocampus and entorhinal cortex. I've never heard that term before.
Yeah.
It's in the brain. They also had better preserved connectivity between regions of the front of the brain that are involved in cognition. Both the superagers and control group showed minimal signs of Alzheimer's disease in their brains.
Which I find very fascinating because I thought you couldn't see that.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah, exactly.
they-
Alzheimer's is only seen on autopsy.
correct. So that is weird. I don't know what it is they're looking at.
Maybe they're talking about the questionnaire they gave them. You know,
Yeah,
they didn't display signs
maybe.
of it. Yeah, you can't see it in the brain. Anyways, you think they took a biopsy of the brain?
That would be scary.
That's crazy. No precise numbers exist on how many superagers there are among us, but Dr. Rogalski said they're relatively rare, noting that far less than 10% of the people she sees end up meeting the criteria. But when you meet a superager, you know it, Dr. Strange said. I don't know where Dr. Strange came from. Dr. Strange is a professor of clinical neuroscience at Polytechnic University of Madrid, and he led the study. So Dr. Strange said they're really quite energetic people
Awesome name.
who can see, they're motivated, on the ball, elderly individuals. What does on the ball mean?
Means
They're with it.
They're with it. They're like ready to go.
Yeah. You know, we have a couple of patients.
I was thinking
We have
about that.
90-year-old patients
Oh yeah.
who are described by as energetic,
Yeah.
memories there.
One of them is like brought in one of her bust sculptures last week. I actually am like, she goes, "You want to come out to my car and see it?" And I'm like, here she is in her 90s. She's driving herself.
She's still teaching.
Yeah,
she
and
teaches at the college.
like she's amazing. I love
You remember
her.
my dad's best friend? He passed away, but he was 94, 95. He was still professor of law at the law school. And
practicing, too.
And he practiced in law, and he had a long list of law students who had applied to intern with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he had the longest list of anybody, and he was in his 90s.
It's amazing.
He didn't have a good hip, but he had a good brain. Experts don't know how someone becomes a super ager, though there were a few differences in health and lifestyle behaviors between the two groups in the Spanish study. Most notably, the superagers had slightly better physical health, both in terms of blood pressure and glucose metabolism, and they performed better on a test of mobility. Now, it said slightly better. You know what I mean? So it's not like they were drastically better with blood sugar and blood pressure, just
Right.
slightly better.
But I also look and I go, think about what someone cognitively goes through, like when they have extreme signs of like a blood pressure that's out of control, high or low, or somebody that has like somebody who's diabetic, whose blood sugar, like cognitively, what happens when they're in an extreme situation where blood sugar is like super high or whatnot, right? Like the cognitive function shuts off,
Yeah.
right?
We know that dementia is extremely closely related to blood sugar.
Exactly. So,
Superagers didn't report doing more exercise at their current age than the typical older adult, but they were more active in middle age. They also reported better mental health. So I'm guessing emotional health, mental and
yes.
emotional health. Overall, Dr. Strange said there were a lot of similarities between the superagers and the regular agers. For example, there were no differences between the groups in terms of their diets, the amount of sleep they got, their professional backgrounds, or their alcohol and tobacco use.
That's interesting.
Wow. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool. And so everyone's probably thinking, oh, it must be genetic, right? Some exercised regularly, but some never had. Some stuck to a Mediterranean diet. Others subsisted of TV dinners. And a few of them still smoked cigarettes. However, one consistency among the group was that they tended to have strong social relationships.
I really believe that.
There you have it.
It takes me back to one of my sociology classes
Yes.
in back in college, and that was one thing that stuck out to me majorly, probably too because I spent so much of my time as a young adult being outside of like my family circle. So I really was by myself a lot. And so that stuck out to me, just going, the people who have a strong circle of influence, the people who are constantly around and have those healthy relationships, those are the people that tend to be healthier
Yeah.
in all aspects of their life. So there had to be something to it. So even, I mean, we're talking 30 years ago, I was reading that information. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And now we have more science to back
There's
that.
a
That's
great
amazing.
book called Love, Medicine, Miracles by Dr. Bernie Siegel. Everybody should read this book.
Yeah.
It came out, I believe, in the early 90s. It might have been even older than that. But Dr. Siegel, I think he's still alive. He's in his late 90s now,
That's awesome.
if he is alive. But he talked about that. He said he was an oncologist, a pediatric oncologist, so, and a surgeon. So he was basically doing operations on children with cancer. And he said that the kids who had the best mental state, strongest emotional state, and
Best
social
outcome.
support all survived
Yeah.
way better than the people who didn't.
Well, I mean, we have a personal case study in our family. Your aunt, who was never married, no children of her own, was living by herself in Gaithersburg, and we, had moved to Frederick. Your mom, had moved back to Iran, so she was really by herself there. And although we weren't far apart, we weren't seeing each other on a daily basis,
Yeah.
maybe on the weekends or something every other weekend. She was sick all the time.
Yeah.
As she was a hairdresser, so yeah, she came in contact with, a lot of people, but she was literally sick every other week and in urgent care, taking medications. She moves in with us. We have young children. They're in school bringing stuff back, and she's around us all the time. We made slight changes to like her supplement medications, things like that. But aside from minor changes there, for all intents and purposes, she's around more germs and stuff that she wouldn't have been around otherwise. And she's healthier now than she ever was before.
Do not discount the power of social interaction.
Relationships, good, healthy
Literally,
relationships.
you'll see people get cancer and their family comes around them and starts to support them, and they
Yeah.
start to get love, and everyone starts calling them,
And they
checking
get
on them,
better.
and they get better. It's incredible. The Agouti mice study, the landmark study on cancer, they basically, it was called Enriched Environment Study, was the name of the study. They took these mice. These mice are inbred. They get injected with toxins, and they actually have cancer put into their bodies, and they study how they respond. When they were kept in cages, they all died within 2 weeks or something.
Yeah.
When they took them out and put them in an environment where they could socialize with other mice in an enriched environment, they recovered from the cancer on their own without intervention. This is phenomenal, and that's what the superagers are. Now, this article didn't emphasize that at all. It's just a
Right.
brief mention of
Correct.
social. But this is what it says. This other guy who was in the study, Dr. Rogalski, and then this other guy, Dr. Harrison, he said superagers probably have some sort of lucky predisposition to some resistance mechanism in the brain that's on the molecular level and that we don't understand yet. I mean, he's like, oh, it's probably some cosmic crazy thing, but we don't understand it yet. But he won't acknowledge that no, it's their relationships and social interactions that keep them young and healthy.
Well, let's talk about some other things that close relationships can actually alter our physiology. Let's talk about women and their menstrual cycles. It is fact that when women are around each other, their cycles will end up matching up. Like, I don't know why that happens, but it very clearly does. Like, we have.
And look at how many sick people showed up, how many depression cases, suicide, all that stuff when we had to isolate for COVID.
Yeah, 100%. So I think that there's so much data
We
to support
reported on
that.
that. Wasn't there like a case where children, it was kids in suicide.
Yeah.
Little kids' suicide rates shot up
Yes.
because of COVID and
Yes.
isolation, but they won't admit it. It's ridiculous. It says, while there isn't a recipe for becoming a superager, yes, there is. Scientists do know that in general, eating healthy, staying physically active, getting enough sleep, and maintaining social connections are important for healthy brain aging. And you know what? Always remember that social part is not
they even
social
said it.
media,
No.
not email and
No,
text.
we're talking about in-person
Yes.
connection. And they even said it in there because they said the superagers in the regular aging population, their sleep was not varied enough to make
It
a
was the
difference.
same
Their
as the other
nutrition
ones.
was not varied enough to make a difference. The only thing that was
Their
different.
blood chemistry wasn't much different either.
Right. The only thing that was different were the relationships.
Yeah.
So let that be. They said it without saying it. Right. I mean, they said it and then they said, we don't know why. It could be something cosmic.
That's what I
It's
wrote
not.
here. Unless there's a drug involved, they're not convinced.
Yeah, exactly. So create more great relationships. You don't need to have 100 best friends, but have close people that are great, supportive, that build you up, don't tear you down. That's the most important thing. But people who will also be honest with you.
Can I give a shout out to my dad's best friend?
Yeah.
You remember we were in Iran. We went to his house, and I asked him. I said, "You're 94 years old, and you're my dad's best friend." My dad was a couple years younger than him, and I said, "What advice do you have? What's the number one advice you can give someone my age?" And at the time, I was in my 30s, and I said, "What would you recommend?" And he said, number one is what you wouldn't expect. He said, find a place where you feel like you're on vacation, buy a house there and live there.
Nice.
He said, life's too short. He said that's number one. Second to that, I'll give you 3 other pieces of advice. Don't ever keep track of the good you do for someone because you'll feel like they owe you. Don't ever keep track of the harm or wrong others do to you, because you'll feel entitled and you'll have resentment. And number 3, always remember you're going to die someday.
Yeah.
And that was it. And he's a superager.
Yeah.
In his 90s, mental clarity, super sharp. He was limping, but he walked with a cane.
Yeah.
But he practiced law to the very last day. Amazing. Very cool stuff.
Good
So
advice.
listen, be a superager. And you know what you do? You put your social relationships ahead of everything else. All right. What's important is God and people.
Absolutely.
That's it. That's number one.
And
Everything else is second.
possibly apple cider vinegar.
Well, there you go. That's right. Next is apple cider vinegar, and this is from New York Times. Do you want to do this one next, or do you want to do something that's faster? We can fly through this. We have 5 minutes. All right, 5 minutes. New York Times says, scam or not, is apple cider vinegar really a cure-all? On TikTok, a man swirls a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar into a cup of water, drinks it, and eats 2 slices of pizza. Then he tests his blood sugar. These are the best results of all, he says, showing a much lower spike on a blood sugar graph than when he ate the pizza without the vinegar. In other posts, TikTok users rave about apple cider vinegar's remarkable ability to help them lose weight, settle their stomachs, and, when applied to their skin, clear their acne and eczema. Apple cider vinegar has been used as a home remedy for healing wounds, quelling coughs, soothing stomach aches for thousands of years, said Carol Johnston, a professor of nutrition at Arizona State University. So it's a good start to the article, but then it changes completely.
Of course it does.
So, apple cider vinegar is made via fermentation, in which yeast and bacteria convert carbohydrates first into alcohol and then into acetic acid, which gives vinegar its pungent taste and odor, and potentially, research suggests, its health benefits, Dr. Johnston said. So, what does the research suggest? Blood sugar control. In the early 2000s, Dr. Johnston, who had been studying how certain diets could help manage type 2 diabetes, came across a study from 1988 showing that acetic acid could lower blood sugar spikes in rats after they were given a starch solution. She was intrigued and decided to test the idea in people with type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance. Since then, Dr. Johnston and other researchers have found in small, limited studies that drinking 1 to 2 tablespoons of apple cider or other types of vinegar mixed with water just before high carbohydrate meals resulted in less drastic blood sugar spikes than meals without vinegar did. Now you go, this sounds like a landmark thing, but no major studies have been done on it. And this doctor, in her own practice, conducted small study, and so have other doctors.
And it will never gain traction. We will
Right.
never see a large study done because there's not a pharmaceutical company
Right.
that stands to gain anything
Which
from
means
it.
our friends at the FDA are not interested.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we know for a fact that vinegars that are made from apples and other fruits contain compounds called polyphenols, which have been proven to have antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. So if we know that polyphenols have that ability, then we know that there are some healing properties that come along with apple cider vinegar, but we can't even say that.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? We can, because we're saying it right now. But very clearly, there are some benefits to this, but you're never going to know the extent of it. And they'll always step back because nobody is going to gain anything from it.
Regarding weight loss, several small short-term studies in adults who were classified as overweight or obese have found associations between apple cider vinegar and weight loss. In a 2009 study of 155 adults in Japan, for instance, researchers found that those who drank 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar in water every day for 3 months lost about 4 pounds. And in one 2024 trial of 120 people aged 12 to 25 in Lebanon, researchers reported that those who took the 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar with water each morning for 3 months lost an average of 15 pounds.
Well, I mean, you have to know that you should see a drastic difference, in my opinion, from two groups of people from 2 very different cultures. Because in Japan, they eat vastly different than they do in Lebanon. So you're also taking 2. I don't even know how you can compare that. Like, there's so many questions I have when they do studies like this.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It says, but the one study that tracked participants after they stopped taking apple cider vinegar found that on average, they regained most of the weight within a month. Most of the weight within a month. Really? And just as many studies on similar groups of people have found no link to weight loss. You're telling me these kids between 12 and 25 gained 15 pounds of fat a month after stopping
Oh,
apple cider vinegar?
and we still think there's no correlation at all.
What in the world were they doing?
I know.
And why didn't they continue? I mean, what's wrong with apple cider vinegar? 2 tablespoons a day, just keep going.
Well, let's see what Wegovy would do. That's
right.
They would
What
rather
happens?
see 'em
What
on
happens to
that.
those people? Ozempic and anyways, what happens to those people when they stop taking
my
it? They
gosh.
balloon up. They not only gain the weight back, they gain a lot more, and they're unhappy. Animal research has also shown that acetic acid can reduce the accumulation of fat in certain tissues and may help increase the secretion of hormones that signal fullness. So while the evidence in humans is mixed, it's plausible that vinegar could help with weight loss, Dr. Daman said.
And I giggle because it also says if vinegar does indeed help people lose weight, it may do so by slowing down digestion, which can make you feel fuller longer.
Yep. Which is a good thing.
I
Which
know.
is
I'm
what
like,
the
what's-
drug does.
What's bad about that?
The
We're doing it naturally.
semaglutide drug classes of drugs all do that.
Right, and-
Except they cause gastroparesis, and this
Oh,
doesn't.
But there's no additional side effects. That's the problem.
That's right. That's right. They're not happy until they have side effects. So the FDA can research it and get paid for it, and then put a drug label on it. It talks about gut health. As far as the bacteria in the gut.
Right. And we were just talking about this last episode. So it says people who use vinegar to treat reflux, which is commonly caused by stomach acid escaping the esophagus, say that acid from the vinegar prompts the stomach to produce less acid. But he added there's no supportive data, and mechanistically, it doesn't make sense that adding acid to the stomach will somehow can help it to control it.
There's always a negative feedback loop in everything. When you inject someone with thyroid hormone, they produce less thyroid hormone. You inject someone with testosterone, they produce less testosterone. Why is it that when you put more acid in the stomach, it produces less, and that doesn't make sense to you? How does that not make sense to you?
I know.
If there's already acid there, it's not going to produce as much.
Correct.
And also, the acid helps you digest the food faster, so you don't get that indigestion we talked about. Anyways, I'm not going to go through it much more. The one on skin had the least evidence. That there's all these studies that these people did studies where they had people rub apple cider vinegar on their skin. Their eczema didn't get any better. Their acne didn't get any better. So they're saying that doesn't work. But people on TikTok say it does. And then they talked about, is it safe to try consuming apple cider vinegar even when diluted can interact with certain medications, including some drugs for diabetes and the heart, as well as diuretics. Apple cider vinegar may also lower blood potassium, which can be a problem for those who already have low levels. Vinegar can erode tooth enamel, so they recommend drinking it with a straw or diluting it in water.
I think is so funny.
Anyways, that's that. I like apple cider vinegar. I think everybody should take a tablespoon a day. Even though the article says it's not necessary and there's no benefit to it, there's plenty of benefit to it. I don't believe what it says. Please do take apple cider vinegar, a tablespoon, dilute it with water, drink it once a day.
They have found there have been some studies and evidence to show that apple cider vinegar can help to reduce calcium deposits in the body.
Yeah.
So somebody who suffers from,
calcific tendonitis.
Yep. Kidney stones, gallstones.
Arterial plaques. Yeah, and kidney stones.
Bursitis.
Oh, absolutely.
Things of that nature. It
Absolutely.
could be helped in that.
The only one I don't know if it helps is acne and eczema.
Right.
I'm not sure about that. But the other stuff, there's
And dark
plenty of
spots.
evidence. The article even says there's evidence, yet they say, no, it doesn't work. I don't know. They're just contradicting themselves. Anyways, it's not a scam. It's a good thing. Well, bless you guys. Thanks for hanging in with us. 50th episode.
Woohoo!
Congrats to all of us. And we will see you next time for number 51.
See ya.